One of my friends had given me a great piece of advice, and he said, because I had told him, I said I bombed so bad, because he had been to that room, so I was like, oh, he was like, but you're funny, you should have done well, and I was like, but I bombed so bad, and he was like, it probably was because you were more invested in what they were feeling, not in how you were feeling, like not in the true place of you, and you being like, this is my perspective, this is my truth.
And how did you get into stand-up comedy?
I was a bachelor for about 10 years, so I was happy for about 10 years. And then I got married. My wife had to move her mother in. Her mother and her dad were together, and the dad was a deadbeat. So they lost their place, and it's like, well, my parents need a place to stay, and can my mother come stay with us? And it's like, I thought it was going to be a short period of time. It ended up being 13 years.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, for the weekend. Can she stay for the weekend? Turned out to be 13 years, but her dad, who was the deadbeat, I couldn't let him come. And I didn't know this before I got married, because I just had girlfriends. What I found out is wives can become, if they bring their mother around, they go back to being daughters. If they bring their kids around, they go back to being mothers. So the wife role is like, I signed up for this, but this other stuff was actually more important. So when her mother moved in, she stopped being the wife, and she started being the daughter again. And so I had to get out of the house at night because I couldn't have her mother running my house. So I had done acting, but the problem with acting is you have to be a player, you have to be in a production. So with comedy, you could say, well, I got to go out and do a show tonight, or I got to go out and work out, or I got to do an open mic. And so that's how I actually got into comedy.
I was always funny as a kid, and I was a class clown as usual. Most comics are. And I was working at the gas company, and I was working in the field, and so I hurt my back. And a friend of mine who was a musician, they had a band called Tierra.
Yes, very big band.
Yeah, they had a big hit. And so he tells me, because he was from the same area, he says, dude, you should be a comedian. And then I said, I'm 33 years old, man. I got a job, I got a family, I got kids. He says, no, you should really open for the band. Oh, okay, so I went up there, did everybody else's material, and then it just bit me. And then just started, one thing after another started happening. I was opening for this band, I was opening for this comic, and then, TV started coming around. So now I just left that job. Well, I didn't even tell them, I just left, and then just started doing this for a living, and it's been great. It's been almost 30 years now, it's 28 years.
Well, Lydia almost literally pushed me out on the stage for Funny Ladies of Color.
I did.
You did.
I did. I said, do it.
Yeah, she called me and she goes, you can do it, you're funny. And you broke me in easily because first I emceed. I hosted the evening and brought everybody on stage. And then I observed, I listened, I saw you.
But you were ready. I mean, it wasn't really, I don't think I've ever done that to anybody else. But you were ready. It was just needing a space.
I got divorced, and it was like a year or so after I got divorced. A friend of mine took me, there was a female stand-up she wanted me to see. Her name was Mary Ellen Hooper. She was an LA comic who moved to Florida. And so we went to see her at a club in Tampa, and during her set, she was talking about her adopted sons. She had two sons. She was very fair, red hair, and her sons are Hispanic, I think from Guatemala maybe. And she goes, does anybody in the crowd have adopted children? So I raised my hand. She goes, well, do they look like you? And I said, well, they're from China, so no. And it got a big laugh, and my friend's like nudging me, And she goes, well, we got they're from China. So really, did we need so no? And then she got a big laugh. And my friend would not let it go. She goes, you're just as funny. You've still got it, blah, blah, blah. And then she got another friend. Her name is Liz Cass. Thank you, Liz. I love you. And now I'm going to make you subscribe. And another friend. And they were just on me. So I contacted the club where I saw Mary Ellen. And I said, my name is Susan Seiger, and I've done a few minutes. And so they looked me up, and they said, oh, when would you like to go on? And so I gave myself 3 weeks. I wrote 7 minutes and packed the audience with my neighbors, my teacher friends, my book club, my bridge club, whatever the hell else I was doing in Florida to make the day go by. There you go. And I said, one night only. I just want to prove that I can do it.
You're starting to pursue your stand-up, and what was the thing that gave you a breakthrough?
Probably when I started working for Mitzi Shore at the Comedy Store.
Mitzi was the owner
of the
club.
Comedy Store.
Yes.
And so I became her gopher, the messenger boy, right? And I had a company car, and then from that, she made me Polly's babysitter, so I babysat her kids, Peter and Polly. I named Polly the Weasel. So I got in, through the family and was, kind of got in tight with Mitzi and the kids. And then I just started getting spots there and started getting better.
So because of Clint Eastwood, you started to do stand-up. What made you take it to the next level?
Well, what really got me moving in that direction was it was emotional. Some people want to become famous to do something. I tried to find a therapist that was Mexican American. I couldn't find one. And I didn't feel comfortable enough to talk to people that were not Latino, knowing our issues or our thoughts and our fears and our woes, especially in Hollywood, because there was nothing in Hollywood at that time that we really, we just kept playing the step and fetch your characters, Latino style. It was me kind of doing it as, I guess, a form of therapy, writing to talk about what it was like being a Latina. And I didn't quite know how to formulate it, but then it came to when I got on the stage to deal with the guy thing, which is a whole other thing. The guy thing is one thing, the Latino guy thing is a whole different thing.
First of all, as a black woman or a biracial woman working in stand-up, a lot of times you're the only woman. What is that feeling like for you?
It's like sometimes it's really fun, but then sometimes it's also like it's a lot of weight. Like, it's always nice when there's multiple girls on the lineup because then you don't feel pressure. Like, when you're the only girl, you're like, especially if you're in a place where it's like they don't get comedy that often or they don't see like female women being funny, there is a sense of like a pressure, like, okay, I have to perform well. But I try not to think about that anymore because, as we know, the more you think about things like that, the less it is to have fun on stage. So I just try to, I try to let the jokes speak for themselves and just kind of do what I've got to do. And, and I do have, I have been blessed. I have like a lot of guy mentors that are really nice and like take me under their wing. But it is like, there still is a lot to be had with navigating the waters. I think it's also like you have to, sometimes I don't have the luxury of like, kind of like being like, okay, I'm gonna just wing it tonight. Like, I really kind of have to come with like the heat on, like, as far as like, because I'm so new that it's still like, you still kind of always have to make sure that like you
got to prove yourself.
You've got to prove yourself, and you've got to make sure, especially if they're not booking women, that they'll book another woman because you were really good, or like they had the audience had a good time with you.
And we decided we were going to take matters in our own hands.
That's right.
And get ourselves on stage.
We did.
And we started Funny Ladies of Color.
We did start Funny Ladies of Color. I love that.
And we started it in the Valley.
We did.
Every Tuesday night. And then outgrew the Valley and decided it was time to be in Hollywood. And you got us into the Comedy Store.
I don't even remember that.
Yeah, you got us into the Comedy Store. We were able to do it every Tuesday night in the Belly Room. And we created opportunities to bring in diverse audiences.
We were the first at the Comedy Store.
Anywhere. We were the first group of independent female comedians of color doing a show together.
When we're talking about it, you know how you just kind of barrel through life? I don't really think about doing those things. I just do it.
The only thing that can build confidence, honestly, is success. If you have a successful set, keep that set, play that set on the way in to build your confidence to know, I am this good. I don't care if you're in a slump and your last 3 or 4 shows have been garbage. Play that set for yourself to remember how good you really are. And the rest of those are the anomalies. Those are the novelty sets. This is the real you. Give yourself that. Now, if you have never had a successful set, what you do to build your confidence, this is what I do, and I do this regularly. I'll watch somebody who's excellent. And it doesn't have to be, I might watch a Bruce Lee movie because that is a form of excellence. I might watch a Muhammad Ali boxing match because that's a form of excellence. I might watch a really good movie that I thought was a really excellent, and the craftsmanship was there, and that will push me to want to rise to a certain level, because if you are living in your head as a young comic, you're not that good. You're a young comic. Watch Richard Pryor, watch Robin Williams, watch whoever you think is really great, and don't be intimidated by that. Say to yourself, if you have the confidence in yourself to even be a comedian, then you have the confidence to be a successful one. Who wants to be a failure? So look at somebody who's really good. And remember this, as a comedian, it is joke to joke to joke, moment to moment to moment. Don't worry if somebody says, hey, I need you to do 10 minutes. It's minute to minute to minute. Think about it like sports, for those of you who play football out there. It's not a game of 100 yards. It's a game of yard to yard, sometimes inches. Write new jokes. Try to write a joke a day, and this is what I advise too. Only write what you know, and then what you know, expand upon that by reading something new every day. It could just be one article that you just pull up on your phone. It could be something you want to know about, or something that's just right there in the news. Pull up something that's a new fact every single day and try to write a joke behind it.
A lot of times what I'll see is somebody who's funny in the street, which is a good thing, because some guys are naturally funny. You want to be naturally funny to be a comedian, but they want to bring that to the stage. And it's a different animal when you get on the stage, because you're not talking to your boys on the corner. You're talking to an audience. Might be a diverse audience. Might be, whatever. But these people came to get entertained. It's not like when you're in the street, you go, hey, your mama this, and and you're a little offensive and stuff. So I tell them, there's a technique. This is how you do a joke. There's a formula. There's a premise, a setup, the punchline. Not everything is a cuss word. Because when you do it in the streets, you can be funny just cussing away. And now you gotta develop a set, and then you gotta have stage mechanics. You have to have a personality. You have to be likable. You have to have your own voice. So they're like, really, I got to do all that? And that's part of it, man. There's guys that go up there and try to do what they do in the street or at home, and it doesn't translate on stage.
Or by the water cooler.
Yeah, by the water cooler, exactly. Yeah, it doesn't translate on stage.
Yeah.
You get hecklers. How do you deal with it?
Honestly, that's a good question. I'm still learning. I had some 7-year-old hecklers on TikTok, and I was just like, I'm just gonna ignore these people. I think the probably the weirdest bomb I had, and I learned a lot from it, was the first time I performed in a black room. I bombed so bad that you could actually hear the bartender pouring the alcohol at the bar. Like, that's how quiet the room was, and it was filled. There was like 40 people, maybe 50, 60. But it was like you could hear the it was, it like had to go to like the back of the bar. You could hear him pouring a gin. Like, no one talking, just him. And I remember when I got off stage, they were like, clap, for her, and nobody clapped. Nobody. I walked to the back. They were like looking at me. I had my stuff in the back, so I had to walk all the way to the back, and then I left. And then the thing is, I was like, I'm gonna go back next week, because I didn't want the fear in me. And I remember going back, and one of my friends had given me a great piece of advice, and he said, because I had told him, I said, I bombed so bad, because he had been to that room, so I was like, oh, he was like, but you're funny, you should have done well, and I was like, but I bombed so bad, and he was like, it probably was because you were more invested in what they were feeling, not in how you were feeling, like, not in the true place of you, and you being like, this is my perspective, this is my truth.
The bad thing about comedy, like you started off, there is no 401k, there is no health benefits. You're self-employed, you got to figure it out. And so many comics that we've had in the circle have died from cancer and needed financial help.
Right. And, it also comes back to me because a few years ago, my wife was very sick with the rheumatoid arthritis, and the medical bills were crazy, I talked to a few guys, and some of the guys took it upon themselves to raise some money, to do a GoFundMe thing. And, Latinos, we want to work for our money, not necessarily, hey, man, give me money. We never heard of GoFundMe or anything. Paul Rodriguez says, we're comics. If one falls, we all come running. And they did. It was a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. Awesome. But that's the power of community. Well, the first time I had my material stolen, it was by Carlos Mencia. Yep, Carlos Mencia, crook of crooks. He stole the best 5-minute set I ever had. Well, actually, it was the first 5-minute set I ever had. He was on stage at the Comedy Store doing my material right before I was supposed to go on and audition for the owner of the club. And I'm standing there freaking out, and I tell my friend Karen, Carlos Mencia stole my material. And she said, well, tell him not to steal it. So here I am telling Carlos Mencia not to steal my material, that it is my material and I want it back. And he had the nerve to tell me, well, don't do it here. Everybody knows I do that material here. So I had to go up right after telling Carlos Mencia not to do my material and audition for Mitzi Shaw. So I get up there because I don't have anything else, and I do my material, only the girl version. I have to tell you, it was horrible. The only good thing about that night was that Mitzi didn't hold it against me. She just said, next time, bring some more material. The lesson I learned from that is that people steal material all the time. And there's nothing you can do about protecting your material except beat somebody's ass. Which I am happy to report that my fellow comedian, Willie Barcena, beat the crap out of Carlos Mencia a few years later, and I had the privilege to see it go down. That was so cool. That was a thank you Jesus moment. And the big takeaway for me was, write the material that is so close to you that if anybody else does it, it's not going to sound authentic. How do you go about networking in stand-up comedy?
I feel like how you network is like there's different levels of like networking in comedy. So I think like at first, like if you're just starting out, the first way you network is like you go to open mic. It might take a bit, like it might be like, 3 months, 4 months in, because like people are a little bit hesitant yet to talk to like newcomers. So it's like you slowly start talking to people, and like you slowly start like, oh, okay, I find out like this is over here, or this other thing is over here, or like, just kind of slowly networking that way. And then when you start getting on shows, it's like then you can start networking with like the people that are on the show that like you've seen, and then you'll be like, oh hey, like I enjoyed your set, like just to make sure that you like
you're starting to build a relationship.
You're starting to build a relationship with even people that you like and people that you find comedy wise are like funny. And then it's like from there I find that like organically your network that you're making of like all these
people
cool
you
people
see regularly,
and people that you're just keeping touch with maybe like electronically, they'll start being like, hey, this other cool thing is happening and stuff like that.
Well, you have to have an understanding of what you're selling to put out there.
Yes.
Because I do see people that are social media selling, and then you go to watch them. I mean, they have
nothing.
And
yes.
you kind of look there and you go, so it's one of those things that you just
you have to know what you sell.
You have to know what you, and you have to be on top of it.
I can do a Cardi B joke all day long in front of young people, old people. They don't get it. I did it. I was in Cocoa Beach, Florida. I told a Cardi B joke, and they all stared at me. And I said, well, my daughter wrote that joke for me, and I don't get it myself. And they laughed. And that's another thing as a young comic, do not be afraid to ad-lib. Now, this is a rule of thumb, and I hope you follow this. Get a solid 5 or 10 minute act that you can take anywhere. Solid. And from that, build another 5, build another 5, build another 5. Before you know it, you got 30 or 45 minutes. But once you get that solid act, be able and don't be afraid to jump off track and say something else that has nothing to do with that. Like if somebody comes in the back of the room and they're wearing a funny suit, don't be afraid to say it. Don't be afraid to live in the moment.
To call the elephant out in the room.
Right.
What kind of advice would you give a young comic or young actor or even a young stunt person?
As far as stand-up goes, watch the comics. Look at your elders, no matter what their issue is or what has happened to them. Look at the form of art that they display. Watch their timing. Watch what they talk about. Watch them as a character. There's certain character comics, and then there's certain writer comics. And you've got to figure out which one you are.
Keep a piece of paper and a pen, or at very least your cell phone to record. And the reason I say paper and pen is because cell phone can run out of the battery, you can be out of the signal area. Any weird thing can happen with electronics or technology. You got a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper, you'll be able to write down whatever you want to, and it's there. As a young comic, This is your sport. If you can keep stats of basketball players and you know how fast a track person can run and all that, keep your own stats.
Yes.
I've had comics that have said to me, it's like, well, man, I like comedy, man, but I don't like the game. I said, but you're a sports fanatic. How can you not like your own game?
Right. That's what I tell young comics. You have to be passionate about this. It's not a thing to go show off to your friends.
And responsible.
Absolutely.
You have to be responsible. If someone gives you the opportunity, you have to not make them out to be, bad. I shouldn't have done this, because don't give them regrets. Why did I help this person?
Right.
They just burned me.
And I always tell young comics, John Wooden was a coach at UCLA. He said something that's always stuck with me. He says, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. And I tell my students this because, like any job, you have to prepare yourself, man. You have to have your stuff ready so when opportunity knocks and you're there, you're ready to go. It's not like, oh, well, can I have 2 more days before I go up? No, I want you here now. It was funny, one time George Lopez had a show called Lopez Tonight, talk show. Not a lot of guys were on that show, the comics. It was more celebrities and stuff. But he called one day, his people called and said, George wants you here tomorrow, 5 o'clock. Well, tomorrow for what? You want me to sweep? What do you so says, no, he wants you to come and do a 5-minute set. So I had been doing it enough years to know I have 5 minutes. So when I got there, I did the 5 minutes. But it was just one of those examples of be ready.
Right.
Be ready. If you're an actor, take acting lessons. It's okay you've been on a TV show already and you've done that. Just keep your chops,
Oh, one last thing I did want to say for people that are new comics or people that are wanting to try comedy is that if you're wondering what kind of place you should start or go to, I would suggest to start your stand-up, especially if you're new or you're scared to do stand-up. Go someplace where it's not a bar or there's not alcohol, because those mics typically are a little bit more, I don't want to say that it's rougher, but it is. It's scarier when you're first starting because there's so many bar patrons or people that aren't listening to you, so there's more push-pull. I remember I had, the third mic I went to was at a bar.
Go to a juice bar.
Well, yeah. Go to a smoothie, go to a cafe, go to a bookstore, go to some place where it's you're not having to fight with already unknown elements of drunk people. Yes. But I do think I'm not bashing those places because I do love going to those open mics and doing that. But if you're just starting out and you don't have the cojones yet, don't go there, because then people will be like, what's wrong with you? You'll be doing, hey, yes, dating in LA is so hard, and they'll be like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, those are the rooms you go to when you are ready to start learning how to do comedy combat, I call it.
Yeah, so it's also you learn to how can you make a loud bar pay attention to you, and you have to do it in a respectful way, because right, if it's not respectful, then people are going to be like, hey, don't come back to my open mic.
Right.
So it's just stuff like that.